Hello everyone, how's it going? It is Tyrnor as always, and this is a bit of a more in-depth video. I'm pretty much taking advantage of the fact that I can't really make most of the videos I'm usually making, and I've had a bit of a brainstorming session, and I've made this my sort of reimagining of Warlords of Draenor. Now, there are many problems with Warlords as an expansion as a whole, and I will only be addressing the story and quest lines and I guess a bit of the game mechanics, although not too much. And I would also like to mention that I am pretty much trying to stick as close to Warlords as I can. So it has the same beginning and end as Warlords of Draenor, but the way we get from that beginning to that end is fairly different, and I think that these differences that I will explain hopefully will make the story a lot better. Now, some things that I would like to do first is I would like to highlight what I feel are problems with the main problems with Warlords of Draenor's story. Namely, the first one is that it pretty much paused Azeroth's story almost entirely. Namely here, the Wrathion storyline and the Horde and Alliance storyline. Obviously, we can't really have a Naga storyline in Warlords of Draenor on Draenor, for instance. So that is the main issue with Warlord's story, that the storyline of Azeroth was completely paused in favor of Warlord's story. My second issue is the ending, obviously. Although, like I said, I'm trying to keep the ending the same, but the road to the ending will be different. So I hope my explanation will make sense. And the third problem, which one could argue would be the main problem, is that the storyline and Warlords as an expansion as a whole really felt incredibly rushed, incredibly half-assed, so to say. It really felt like it was made mostly to hype up the movie rather than be an actual good story. Yeah. So, starting with the premise that Wrathion and Wrathion and Kairos Dormu, aided by the Dragon Maw clan and the Infinite Dragonflight, have freed the Garrosh from his trial and sent him to Draenor to form the Iron Horde and all of that good stuff. The premise is, I think, it's not the best premise for an expansion that was available. They could have, for instance, immediately skipped to the Legion invasion or to an Ajara and South Seas expansion or whatever. But it's not as awful as some people have said it is, in my honest opinion. I think it does show potential. It is not bad on its own, but it's not as good as the other options, but it is not completely awful. Now, I'm going to sort of guide you through the story I have in my head for Warlords, as a sort of play-by-play, if you will. We go through the intro experience in Tanaan, pretty much the same, and then we arrive in Shadowmoon Valley and Frostfire Ridge, respectively. And now I'm going to mention another problem with the story we have in Warlords, that the Alliance and Horde storyline is completely paused. Instead, the Alliance and Horde are represented through the Draenei and the Frostfoes, respectively, and their storylines, which the Draenei and Frostfoes storyline are more or less fine on their own, but they do not really add anything to the Alliance and Horde storylines as they are now in the live version of Warlords of Draenor. So I'm going to start with Frostfire Ridge and the Frostwolves first, since I mainly play Horde and that is what I mainly know what to talk about, so to say. One subtle bit in Warlords of Draenor which I noticed, but not many other people did, was that they sort of tried to link the Frostwolves with the new Horde, with Vojan's Horde, by having the Frostwolves storyline be one about family. And it makes sense. The new Horde with Vojan in charge is, as Vojan himself has put it, a family. The problem is that the link between the two storylines was never really established. These ideas of Durotan's family and the Horde as a family exist in their own separate universes, no pun intended. They're unconnected, they're separate. So I think there should be, alongside the storyline, Durotan's storyline with the Thunderlord clan and his family, there should be, in Frostfire Ridge at the very least, a storyline about dissent in the ranks of the Horde soldiers. For instance, the Orc soldiers don't get along well with the Troll soldiers, or if other soldiers from other races due to the whole Garrosh thing. Or there's mistrust of the undead soldiers because of everything that happened since the Wrathgate and Undercity, and so on and so forth. And you, the commander, and Thrall have to somehow make these soldiers work together, but you're not really succeeding. However, we have Durotan's storyline with his brother, Gunnar. It should influence the thinking of the soldiers, and the ending of Frostfire Ridge, where Durotan and Gunnar, despite being so different, still stand together, it should resonate with these Horde grunts in my storyline, and maybe have Thrall show them the outcome of the battle at the mountain pass, and then have him use this analogy to basically tell the Horde soldiers, look, this is what the Horde is about as well. If we stand together, we can fight it back against anything. Thrall made a Horde after all, he would obviously know. And having Thrall do it alongside the commander would feed into a point I'm going to make later on. For the Draenei and Shadowmoon Valley, I will admit that I don't know in great detail what happens there, since I'm a Horde player mostly, and I didn't have quite the time to get an Alliance character through the zone, though I know most of what happens, not the greatest details. However, I think there should be a little storyline added for the Shadowmoon Valley regarding the Alliance. While the Horde are trying to regain their sense of unity and family in Frostfire Ridge, the main idea behind the Alliance as a whole, so to say, is that it's a coalition of righteous people standing against darkness. At least that's the way I see it. So, in parallel to the Horde storyline in Frostfire, I think that in Shadowmoon, individual Alliance soldiers should start becoming, say, more bloodthirsty or more savage because they hate the Orcs so much. They have very good reason to hate the Orcs, obviously, especially with what happened recently with Garrosh. And the issue is not considering them as enemies, so to say. The problem in this imagined storyline is that several of these Alliance soldiers are becoming too extreme. For example, you, the commander, are getting reports that several soldiers have taken to painting their faces with the blood of slain Orcs, for instance. And eventually, perhaps, an entire unit maybe renames itself to something like the Orc Annihilators or something, and become extremely savage and bloodthirsty, and all of that. And this is where the Draenei would come in. The Draenei are pretty much the epitome of what is good and righteous within the Alliance. And let's say in this imagined storyline of mine that the troops are sort of silently encouraged by Vindicator Marad, who we all know hates the Orcs with a passion. But then he meets and works with Irel, and as Irel as a character develops into the beacon of justice that she eventually becomes, Marad realizes that stooping to the low level of the Orcs he hates so much would only make him as low as they, so to say. And this storyline of mine would maybe culminate with Irel and Marad giving a speech to the Alliance garrison, sort of similar to Thrall's speech maybe, and the Alliance soldiers who had also become savage and bloodthirsty would then feel embarrassed at what they would become, and they would vow to once again become the beacons of justice that they are supposed to be, as cliche as that might sound. Now, moving on, here would be the first major change, sorry, which I would argue is also a major gameplay change. After Frostfire Ridge and Shadowmoon Valley, respectively, both the Horde and the Alliance, I think, should go to the northern part of Talador, maybe split it into two zones and not go to Gorgrond yet, and in order to fight off the Iron Horde invasion of the Draenei. The reasoning on the part of the Alliance should be obvious. The Draenei are their allies and their main foothold on Draenor. For the Horde, it should be part of the same mentality that I mentioned with Frostfire, with the Horde, with the family and unity and such, and basically be a show of solidarity with the Alliance and the Draenei. The Orcs, and by extension the Horde, do not really have it in their culture to apologize for past mistakes. Instead, they take action to rectify them, and what better way to show the Alliance that this is not Garrosh's Horde than by standing alongside them in their hour of need. So both factions would go to Talador to fight off the Iron Horde. Now, like I mentioned before, I disliked how absent in many ways the Alliance and Horde are in Warlords storyline. Instead, like I said, in the live version, they act through the Draenei and the Frostwolf clan. Now this works in a way for the Alliance, since the Draenei are one of the great powers of Draenor, and they also symbolize the values that the Alliance aspires to. But the Frostwolf clan is just 80 people, or around 80 people. They don't have the resources or the manpower to sustain the Draenor campaign, no matter how fierce their individual warriors are. So here's my change to this first part of Talador's storyline. You fight the Iron Horde and realize that this invasion is led by Orgrim Doomhammer, like in the live version, and throughout the quest line you would notice, and several NPCs would remark, that these Iron Horde soldiers are sort of empowered in a way. I'll get into that at a later moment. Otherwise, things go pretty much the same up to Shatrath, where Doomhammer turns against Blackhand. However, instead of dying entirely pointlessly and wasting his character, I would have Doomhammer turn to the side of the good guys entirely, specifically to the side of the Horde. He would at first inform both the Alliance and the Horde of the Iron Horde's plans in Gorgrond. And these plans are namely that the Blackrock clan, who form the main bulk of the forces invading Talador, are in contact with and are being empowered by Wrathion and the magic he gathered in Mists of Pandaria. Doomhammer also convinces the Iron Horde soldiers left in Shatrath after Blackhand is defeated and retreats to join with the Horde and the Frostwolf clan, and this would sort of become his character from now on. Throughout the campaign, he would try to persuade other members of the Iron Horde to join with the Frostwolves in resisting them. Again, I say this should happen because the Draenei are a great power in Draenor, while the Frostwolves are 80 people. Otherwise, the idea that the Draenei could fight on an equal footing with the Frostwolves against the Iron Horde, an idea which has been sadly adopted by Blizzard in Warlords, is frankly kind of absurd. And so, like I said, Doomhammer tells both factions that Wrathion is empowering the Blackrock clan in Gorgrond. The Alliance and Horde, more so than the Draenei and the Frostwolves, establish bases in the southern part of Gorgrond. And I say the Alliance and Horde more than the Draenei and the Frostwolves because Wrathion is their mess to clean up, not Draenor's mess. However, both factions find themselves in the middle of the conflict between the Breakers and the Primals in the southern part of Gorgrond, and both are unable to maintain their base because of it and the whole disturbances on that part of the world. However, both factions, not just the Horde, would then decide, in my storyline, to befriend the Laughing Skull clan. The Laughing Skull would know how to survive in Gorgrond's harsh environment. They are not part of the Iron Horde, and in the main universe, the Laughing Skull have worked with both the Alliance and the Horde. The Laughing Skull helped then the Alliance and Horde survive and guide them throughout southern Gorgrond in exchange for various errands of their own. They are definitely not happy that they have to work with the Alliance and Horde, but they eventually decided it's better than standing alone against the Iron Horde and the primal environment of Gorgrond. Now secure in the southern part of Gorgrond, the Horde and Alliance would then move north. There they gain the assistance of Rexxar, who opposes the Iron Horde because of what they are doing to the land and because they slaughtered his own people, the Mach Nefal. The Machnafor are also completely absent in Warlords, but Rexxar is still there, so go figure. The two factions carry on attacks against the Iron Horde and the Blackrock clan, but then notice that many of the troops that they are fighting are not empowered in the same way the Blackrock forces were in Talador. Then Khadgar would arrive and inform the commander that Wrathion was spotted somewhere in Gorgrond alongside an Orcish escort. The commander and a small party would track him down, only to discover that Wrathion himself is tracking something else down. They eventually catch up to Wrathion and attack him. His escorts then shred their orc disguises and reveal themselves as members of the Bronze and Infinite Dragonflights. And they are eventually defeated, and Wrathion is left surrounded by the commander and their forces. Then Wrathion would go on a rant that he was doing the best for Azeroth, and that he was trying to track down Gul'dan, who was spotted in Gorgrond by the Iron Horde. Suddenly a demonic portal would pop up because Wrathion could not get to Gul'dan in time. The commander of his escorts would have to fight to close the portal, and in the confusion Wrathion would manage to escape. I should also mention that in my imagined storyline, the Khadgar questlines with Gul'dan in Shadowmoon Valley and Frostfire Ridge would also happen during those zones' respective progressions. After what happens in Gorgrond, you get reports that the Burning Legion through Gul'dan has begun an invasion of the southern part of Talador and Auchindoun. Then the storyline would progress pretty much the same as it is now in the live version, including the transition to Spires of Arak. Now, after the Spires of Arak comes Nagrand. I would add a little storyline to Nagrand concerning Wrathion and Garrosh. I would add a storyline where you once again find out that Wrathion has been spotted in Nagrand. You, the commander, would summon Khadgar, who is accompanied by Chromie, who came because she was alarmed by the report you sent of Wrathion being accompanied by Bronze and Infinite Dragonflight members. Yes, I'm basically removing that entire quest line from the legendary quest chain. The three of you then spy on a meeting between Garrosh and Wrathion. Wrathion would begin to talk about the growing threat of the Burning Legion, only to be interrupted by Garrosh. Garrosh is angry because this new horde that he forged is not free of outside influence, namely Wrathion's influence like he wanted. He is angry because Wrathion helped the Blackrock clan without informing either Grommash or Garrosh himself, and he threatens Wrathion to leave or suffer the same fate as the Bronze Dragon, namely Kairos Dormu. Wrathion is shocked to find out what happened to Kairos and manages to escape Garrosh. Other than that, I would also add some quests in Nagrand to emphasize, hey, the Gorian Empire, the ogres are also here, and they've got magic breakers, which are really dangerous. As to Garrosh's death, I would argue that it's best the way it currently is. There are obviously a lot of people with a grudge and a good reason to deal the killing blow to Garrosh, but I think it does make the most sense for Thrall to do it. I would not want the players to do it because it feels kind of cheap and a bit weird since we already fought him in Siege of Orgrimmar. These are just my personal thoughts, you are free to disagree. After Nagrand comes the Garrison campaign. I would want to remove pretty much entirely the Heart of Gorgorek storyline since it was kind of meh and had an extremely unsatisfying end. In its stead, I would have the commander, deal with more and more Legion gateways opened by Gul'dan. Eventually, during one such mission, Wrathion would show up and somehow would either help or save you, and then he would tell you, hey, let's meet at your garrison and talk. At the garrison, he would renounce the Iron Horde and confess that he helped free Garrosh in order to create this weapon to fight against the Legion and to sort of prepare Azeroth for its coming. However, after meeting with Garrosh and Nagrand, he realizes that Hellscream is basically too savage and uncontrollable, no pun intended again. He then offers his services to the commander in order to thwart the Burning Legion and the Iron Horde. And then throughout the Garrison campaign, you would also get reports that Gul'dan has opened more and more portals for the Legion in Draenor, and he has even established a firm foothold on the throne of Kil'jaeden in Tanaan Jungle, with the Iron Horde basically on the point of collapse. Wrathion then would approach the commander and say that Grommash would probably be open to negotiating with the Horde and the Alliance to stand together against the Legion now that Garrosh is dead. You then would work with Wrathion and Orgrim Doomhammer to arrange a meeting with Hellscream, who agrees to this meeting. At the meeting, the two sides basically would agree to a ceasefire. However, the last remaining chieftains within the Iron Horde, other than Grommash himself, namely Azuka Bladefury and Kilrog Deadeye, are opposed to this peace. Kilrog, however, would respect for now his oath to Grommash and would remain loyal to the Iron Horde, but Azuka Bladefury and her clan would rebel. The last bit of the Garrison campaign would be the players' forces fighting alongside Hellscream's Iron Horde against the Burning Blade and defeating them so that they can focus on their attention on the bigger threat, namely the Burning Legion. However, that is when Gul'dan makes his move. The 6.1 cinematic would basically happen where Gul'dan shows up, captures Grom, and Kilrog drinks the demon blood, and assumes leadership of the Iron Horde, turning them over to the Legion side. Sorry again. One thing that I would like to mention is that Warlord's story is quite obviously based on Beyond the Dark Portal and its story. There are quite a few references to that in game, the most obvious of which is, I think, Khadgar. Khadgar kind of fills the same role he did in Beyond the Dark Portal in Warlords. While Turalyon, or the commander, is busy fighting the Horde, or the Iron Horde respectively, Khadgar is focused on the true mission, the real reason why they are there on Draenor, so to say. So now that the Iron Horde is firmly entrenched in Tanaan, the territory of Kilrog Deadeye and the Bleeding Hollow, I think it would be time to expand the commander's little council with someone a bit old school. For the Alliance, I think that one should be none other than Danaf Trobane. Other than Khadgar, he is one of the sons of Lothar who ventured beyond the Dark Portal, pun very much intended, to take the fight to the Horde on Draenor, and his experience and knowledge would be invaluable. Why him in particular and not, say, Kurdran, for instance? Because Danaf was the one who tracked down Kilrog Deadeye in Beyond the Dark Portal. He fought and defeated the Bleeding Hollow clan, and he personally slew Kilrog himself. So pretty much a know your enemy sort of thing. For the Horde, the commander's little council should now include Jorin Deadeye, in my opinion, the only surviving son in our universe of Kilrog Deadeye, who is also the current chieftain of the Bleeding Hollow in our universe. So, aided by these veterans of Beyond the Dark Portal who know Kilrog Deadeye the best, we would then operate and move on to Tanaan Jungle. Now, the only change I would add to Tanaan itself is through Orgrim Doomhammer, once again, who would slowly recruit Iron Horde deserters against Gul'dan. And this is important to note that among the deserters there are also Gorian ogres and magic breakers. Otherwise, I feel that Tanaan is fine. Well, I would obviously add little tidbits for Jorin and Danaf, but I liked the storylines that Tanaan has in Live. The Cipher of Damnation, for instance, I liked, so we'll keep that in there, so to say. The biggest changes I would make would be to Hellfire Citadel itself. Not to the bosses themselves necessarily, but to its storyline, quote-unquote. After we free Hellscream in the raid, I would have him rally those in the Iron Horde who are still loyal to him, along with Orgrim Doomhammer's faction. This would be more of a background element and not necessarily part of the mechanics themselves. For instance, if the players would ever go to a balcony, they would see Hellscream gathering his army in the courtyard, for instance. And in the final battle against Archimonde, I would not just have Grom, Khadgar, Yrel, and Durotan. I would have all of the Iron Horde that Grommash managed to gather. I would have Orgrim Doomhammer, I would have Wrathion, and I would have obviously Danaf and Jorin Deadeye. I would change the fight a little bit. Gul'dan would open multiple portals to summon more and more demons, which the Iron Horde orcs would then be busy fighting against. Again, this more as a sort of background element rather than part of the mechanics of the fight itself. to sort of show that the Iron Horde is contributing to this fight against the Legion. I would have all the characters I named previously assist the players in the fight against Archimonde, and above all, I would have the aforementioned Ogre Magic Breakers play a role in Archimonde's mechanics. Since hey, why even introduce the Magic Breakers if you're not going to use them in the story? That would be stupid, right? And then after all that, the ending cinematic would occur. So this is my version of Draenor's story, where I have tried to maintain pretty much as much of it as possible and still have the same beginning and end. I personally think this makes much more sense than Warlords, otherwise, in my opinion, Rush's story, at the very least, since the story was more than the random little storylines with little to no impact on each other or on the overall story, but it actually built towards something. So in the end, the Burning Legion was defeated, Draenor is at peace, the Horde and Alliance have overcome their respective internal struggles, and the stage is set for World of Warcraft Legion. But I think I've talked for long enough. So let me know what you think. I would really like to hear your thoughts, and without further ado, I would see you all later.